This is going to be funny.
All right, so I'm out here at the field with my good friend Jason here, and I asked him to show us how to do a Harrier landing. I read an article on it, and it didn't seem legit to me as to how he was doing it. So I asked him to come out and do a demonstration on that. So you want to talk a little bit about the Harrier landing?
Yeah, sure. Harrier landing's a fairly advanced 3D maneuver. It puts your plane in a little bit of danger because you're in full stall and you're coming at the ground. So really, it's something that if you're comfortable with Harriers, only then should you move to the Harrier landing. But it is a fun way to land. It always draws attention. It's a good way to end a routine, so we'll definitely fly a couple samples of that. First thing, obviously, is to get comfortable in an upright Harrier. Wing rock is normal. All planes do it at certain speeds and elevator settings. The biggest misconception about flying low and slow like this is that your elevator controls your altitude and your throttle controls your speed. It's actually exactly opposite of that. The more elevator you add, the higher the angle of attack, the slower the plane goes. The more throttle you add, the slower it descends, or the faster it ascends, depending on where you are. So that's the big thing to remember.
So for most pilots like myself, who's not that advanced, that would be kind of really confusing at first.
Yeah, it's a concept that I talk about a lot when I'm teaching people how to land an airplane as well. It's always the case.
Yeah.
Speed is always, across the ground, is always controlled by the amount of elevator. And a rate of ascent or descent is controlled by the throttle, but you don't think about it in a normal setting. So yeah, so that's that first thing to remember. Second thing is practice up high. Practice your Harriers. Practice letting it come down. Practice slowing the descent down. Do some low Harriers right down the runway. Practice keeping it lined up, keeping the wings level, keeping it a couple feet off the ground. So that way you get really notice the altitude changes when you're close to the ground. So just take your time. Bring it slower and lower and slower every time. We'll fly a couple things where I accentuate and show the differences in speed with the different elevator settings and throttle. But again, the big thing is because you're coming in full stall, you can get a little too slow and catch tail wheel and plop it in. So you are risking your plane. I mean, we risk our plane every time we take off.
So you basically can risk your tail, your rudder,
yep,
your tail wheel, and your landing gear.
Your landing gear, yeah. So the biggest thing people do is they'll plop it down really hard or a little fast. They'll panic at the end. They'll hammer the throttle. Main gear come down, you'll rip the gear right out or crack the landing gear plate. Generally, they don't come all the way out because you're going fairly slow, but just something to keep in mind.
So then we should have me do that, demonstrate exactly how that happens.
Sure, bring your airplane next time.
Oh, my airplane?
So and the other thing, I believe I read the same article that you read. The other thing we have to remember is this isn't a maneuver that can only be flown with a specific airplane. A lot of people like to say you have to have a big plane, you have to have a lot of elevator, you have to have a lot of power. All those aren't true. You can actually fly a Harrier landing with a trainer. It's not going to look as impressive. It may not be as high alpha, but you can do it. You can do it with an apprentice. You can do it with a timber.
That's a good idea. What we're going to do is we'll go out there now, and he's going to show us how to go through the Harrier maneuver with an aerobatic plane. Yep. And then we'll have future videos for you guys to watch where we're going to bring out other planes where we'll just do Harrier landings with them just to show you that it can be done with other planes.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that'd be great.
That'd be a good little series to put together just to show people the different ways to do this with different aircraft.
That's it. We had to do one on floats too, I think.
Okay. I got a couple float planes
to mess with
it,
just to mess with it.
Sure, why not?
All right, there we are. All right, so let's head on out there and let's check this out.
Plane of this caliber or even of this size, and we'll do follow-up videos on how to fly this maneuver with other airplanes. Kind of get a feel for the plane, make sure everything's working the way it should, everything's trimmed out. So the first part of this maneuver is going to be mastering the Harrier. If you don't know how to do an upright Harrier yet, you are not ready for this maneuver. There are several ways to get into the Harrier. You just use your best way. We can do a Harrier landing, we can do an elevator landing, we can do whatever we want. So I'm just going to come by nice and slow and get her into the Harrier by slowly pulling elevator, slowing the plane down, and flying a normal pattern just like we normally would at full speed. Wing rock is 100% normal in a Harrier. You can try adjusting your amount of elevator and your amount of throttle to try and level it out a little bit. So as we come in the Harrier, we come in nice and easy, get the plane flying a little bit as we get close to the ground, and we're down. As we said in the intro to this, possibility of hurting your plane is there. This can be kind of rough on the landing gear. You want to make sure you add throttle as you touch down to get the plane flying a little more so it doesn't touch the tail wheel and then slam the plane into the ground. So we'll go nice and long on this one. We'll try and bring it a little closer to ourselves. So getting into the Harrier, adding a little throttle here, getting her settled in. That's the most important thing, is getting the plane settled. Using throttle to control our descent, as you can see. She's down. So what would be a good way to practice getting lined up with the runway? Let's talk about that. Let's use a different maneuver to get into the Harrier here. Snap to Harrier. So you want to practice flying the Harrier right down the middle of the runway and maintaining your altitude with your throttle, not your elevator. Elevator controls your speed. So this is a good way to get used to it. See, if I add more elevator, it slows down. Less elevator, she speeds up. So let's do another pass like that. We're going to modulate our speed as we go down the runway. So like I said, it's a common misconception that elevator controls your altitude when in reality it controls your speed, especially when in the Harrier position. Throttle controls your altitude and how quickly the plane climbs or drops. So as we're approaching the numbers here, I'm going to add more elevator and slow her down. See, slower there. Slower, 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 slower. And then I let out the elevator a little bit. It speeds up a little bit. So one neat way to use this maneuver is to end a freestyle flight or just a fun flying flight. So one of the things I like to do, one of the ways I like to enter into this is from inverted. This is one of my favorite ways to end a flight. We're going to do a pass, nice and low. Go past the end of the runway a little bit. We're going to push up. Positive snap to the opposite direction into an elevator. Dropping right down toward the numbers. Now, as I said, we use our throttle to control our descent. As we get close, we start adding a little bit of throttle. And we're down. We'll take back off. Pop top into Harrier. You can use all these different maneuvers to get to the Harrier, however you want to do it. Now we're downwind and we're going a little slow, so we're going to let out the elevator and speed her up a little bit, even though we're staying in a high alpha or a high angle of attack. See, as I let the elevator out, the plane speeds up. All right, one last approach here, nice and easy. Get the plane settled. The big thing, especially as we come into the wind. Rudder guides us in. Oh yeah, see right there, there's a good example. Tail wheel's trashed. There you have the Harrier Landing, folks. Anybody who's doubting our, I guess, mission to be real and have actual reviews, look right about there at the rudder on my airplane. Yeah. It happened. I bounced one in. I was busy talking, trying to walk through the maneuver. I'm sure John's going to throw the clip of that in the flight video portion of this. So
no, I'd edit it out if you didn't talk about it. But now that you talked about it, it's going
hey,
on.
I want people to see this stuff happens. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and comment. If you liked this video, please subscribe and hit the little bell for notifications. And we'll be sure to put links of all the equipment we used here so you can check it all out.
We'll also put a link in there for the new rudder donation.
Yes, yes. Now we can use, what's that? What is that everybody uses? I can't even think.
The rudder donation one, yeah.
Yeah, the rudder donation, yeah. Anyways, until next time, guys, fly safe.
So anyway, today we're out here at the field because I read this article. Piece of shit article. Guy doesn't know what the he's talking about. He's never done a Harrier Landing. life, but yeah, he's going to write all about it. This is what happens when I leave. So anyway, back to you, Jason.
I don't know about all that, but
damn, it's too bad we can't use this stuff. Huh? All right, well,
Okay.
let's get serious.
oh, you're killing me.
This is the kind of stuff I really want to put on.
I know. Okay.
You ready?
Go.